Prepmedians breaking news, Yale and Harvard Law Schools have said deuces to U.S. News and World Report rankings. Yale has literally been the #1 law school according to U.S. News and World Report rankings since 1990, the year I was born. So after more than 30 years of #winning, Yale says that they don't like the way that U.S. News calculates its rankings. Disclaimer, I'm a graduate of Yale College, but not law school. Yale's main issue is that U.S. News uses metrics to calculate its rankings that don't align with crucial parts of Yale's mission, that it has a diverse group of incoming students, and that it encourages students into going into public service. So let's dive into the methodology that's used by U.S. News to rank law schools. Yale wants to have an incoming class that is diverse, meaning includes low-income students and people of color. And one of the things that they're worried about if the median law school admission test, the LSAT, which is basically like the SAT for law schools, is such a big factor, is that they won't be able to properly account for the fact that low-income students don't necessarily have access to highly effective test prep. Basically, Yale might want low-income students who are rock stars, but they might have low LSAT scores. But if LSAT scores are such a major factor in U.S. News rankings, then Yale has this perverse incentive to give money to people with high LSAT scores so that they can maintain their ranking rather than the low-income students who actually really need the money. Another metric that U.S. News uses that Yale has issue with is the average debt incurred. And this is understandably going to impact low-income students more than high-income students, but also it impacts people going into public service more than it impacts people going into corporate law, because salaries of people going into public service are typically lower than salaries of people going into corporate law. Now, Yale has assistance that they give to people going into public service, but that's not calculated within this, which is another issue that Yale has. And another metric that U.S. News uses that Yale has an issue with is the employment rates for 2020 graduates, or any graduates for the particular year, 10 months after graduation and at graduation. So specifically, this at graduation is disadvantageous for a place like Yale that encourages students to go into public interest because they have a much less traditional and definitive timeline for getting jobs compared to, again, corporate law colleagues. One of the reasons that Yale might have recently had this epiphany that it needs to get out of the U.S. News rankings is that the average debt metric is something that has only been used for the past 2 years. The other thing is that maybe it realizes that after 30 years of being #1, the only way to increase its street cred is to just say that they're too cool for the rankings. U.S. News holds firm and says that it uses this data and these rankings to hold law schools accountable. Also, a lot of this data is publicly available, so let's see if they continue to include these schools anyway.